In today's video, we'll be going over and discussing the difference between motivation, willpower, and discipline. In a previous video, I went over the discussion of the difference between motivation and discipline. However, there is a third thing, willpower, and instead in this conversation, I'll be going over the definitions and different parts of the brain that govern them, or at least one of them. So, discipline is specifically doing something that you do not want to do. For example, if you do not want to go on a run in the morning, but you decide to, chances are that you used discipline to do it. Motivation is doing something specifically when you want to do it, such as going for that run, but you actually wanted to go on that run. For example, if you've had a week in a row of doing running and you're really hyped up about it, and so you decide to go on the run because you're really motivated too. Willpower is kind of an opposite of these two things. It is the resistance of something. For example, if you are on a diet and there's a cookie on your table, you will probably want to resist that cookie and stay on your diet. Therefore, you are using willpower to resist the temptation of the cookie. Now, discipline is governed by a part of the brain, not entirely, by a part of the brain called the anterior midcingulate cortex. This part of the brain, as I've said in a previous video, is responsible for how discipline works. Now, how does discipline work? Discipline works to where you have a small amount of it at first. So, for example, if I want to go on a run, if I don't have that much discipline stored up, it's going to be harder for me to go for a run. I'm going to have to use more discipline to do it. But when I go on that run, when I use discipline to do it, the anterior midcingulate cortex grows. And when this happens, you have more discipline reserve. Therefore, the next time it's going to be relatively easier to discipline it out. Now, motivation is powered through dopamine. So dopamine obviously is a pleasure chemical, or as some of you may know, is a pleasure chemical. It is released, and when it's released, you experience pleasure. It is a habit-building chemical, or habit-building neuromodulator rather, that is in charge of reward as well as motivation. So dopamine is in charge of motivation. Therefore, as I covered in a previous video, you had more motivation to do things. Therefore, dopamine to do things in a morning setting. So as you wake up, you had more dopamine reserves and you had more motivation to do things. As the day goes on, your motivation to do things depletes, as well as your willpower. Now, your willpower is powered by your frontal lobes or your prefrontal cortex. Your prefrontal cortex is this front part of the brain that is seen as the conductor of the brain. So basically, this part is what stops your pleasure chemical or dopamine from going haywire. As in, if you're very motivated to eat that cookie, the prefrontal cortex is kind of the brake to the car that is dopamine. So that is the difference between willpower, discipline, and motivation. There you go.